So let's talk about comfort. This seat is actually a very good seat. I do like it. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's a firm seat. It's not exceptionally well padded. And the only real issue that I see with this seat is that after about 2 hours of riding on it, you're going to start doing the little squishy dance, where you're trying to get a little bit different position and take some of the pressure points off. And this seat doesn't really allow you to do that. There are seats like I've sat on the Victory Vision, even the Cross Country, my Suzuki Boulevard, where you can move around more. You've got more freedom to just kind of move wherever you want to go. This seat does kind of lock you in, and fortunately it locks you into a comfortable position, but any seat, any comfortable position after a couple of hours is going to be a little bit tough. So, that being said, there is a driver's backrest, which I do own. I don't have it with me. I don't use it very often. I've tried it on long trips. It's an interesting study in catch-22-ness. And the reason it's a catch-22 is that with the backrest, your arms don't get as tired, your shoulders don't get as tired, because you're not using your arms to hold yourself up. You're just resting back, and your arms are just hanging here, and so that's very nice for long trips. But the flip side of it is that with the backrest, you also are even more so locked into one position. Like, I'll give you an example. On a long trip, I can actually, because there isn't much of a reach to these controls, I can push myself back a little bit on the seat, and I can sit more up here, almost on the passenger pillion here. And I'm not really on the passenger pillion, but I'm just enough that I've changed some pressure points here and there, so I can do that. On long trips, that's very nice. With the backrest, however, you are pretty much locked in to one spot, and not only that, but you're being pushed up more on the seat. So if you're a fat guy like me and you're not really comfortable with having a very narrow seat, then really what you're doing is you're being pushed up onto the tank just a little bit more, just a hair, not much, but it's enough that with that backrest you're forward more and you do feel more pressure. So it all depends on what you want to have be more sore, your arms or your butt. That's really what it comes down to, as to whether or not you use the driver's backrest or not. Speaking of comfort, the windshield. Now, the stock windshield, I hate it. I hate the stock windshield with the white hot passion of the sun. It is this big, bulbous mass of distorted plastic that just sits in front of you and is determined to not let you see anything. So, and when I say distorted, I mean literally maybe 1.5 inches around the edges. It's just distortion. It's a terrible, terrible windshield. I think if you're 7'9", you would love that windshield because you could see right over it and you wouldn't have to bother with it at all. And the 4 inches of travel for a short guy like me doesn't really do much. You can get it just so that it's, the lowest point is just so that it's like right in that field, that line of vision that you don't want it to be in. So within about a week of having this bike, I bought the shorty windshield. The shorty windshield is much, much better for me. This is this the highest position or is this the lowest? I think it's in between. I actually don't mess with it very much. It was in between. That's as high as it goes, and I can still see over it just fine. So on the highway, going down the highway, the wind is going right over me. There's no buffeting. Excuse me, there's a nice little gap down here which allows some air to come in behind. Again, no buffeting. And then around town, if you just want it out of the way, you can get it to go down really quite low. That's as low as it goes. And so that's really nice. It's I really do like this windshield. That being said, no matter what you do, no matter what windshield you have, it's going to rattle. My number one complaint about this bike over the last 6 or 7 months has been the rattle. It doesn't come from the windshield, it comes from the brackets that mount the windshield. And basically, the issue is, I mean, I've brought this back to the dealer and I've complained about it, because when I say rattle, I mean like it really rattles. You can hear it at low speeds, at high speeds, particularly at low speeds. And if you're wearing a half helmet, my gosh, you're going to just hear rattle, 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 rattle. So I brought it back to the dealer and I said, look, you know, there's something wrong. You got to fix the rattle. And they said, actually, it doesn't matter if we fix it. It's going to happen again. They just all rattle, period. So that's the reason it's my number one complaint about the bike. Is number one, I love the bike so much that there aren't that many complaints. But it really does detract from the riding experience. You know, you've got this great exhaust note behind you. You've got some valve noise. Okay, that's all right. But what you hear, I mean, you've got, you know, a radio, you've got 4 speakers. But what you hear all the time is the windshield rattling. And it doesn't matter what position you have it in. People say, oh, raise it up, then just drop it a little bit and the rattle goes away. It doesn't happen. It's always there, and it just always reminds you that you're going to hear rattling no matter what you do or where you go. So that's a very big complaint, my biggest complaint about this bike to date. People have said that the center display here is hard to see in the sun, and that's true. It is, especially with polarized sunglasses. Forget it, you're just not going to see it at all. But don't let that be a determining factor in whether or not you purchase this bike, because in reality, the main thing that I look at on here is really probably, you know, occasionally I look to see what gear I'm in if I'm unsure about it, which I rarely am. And yes, you might want to see what's playing on your iPod or what your tire pressure is. It does have an integrated TPMS, by the way, which is very nice. But in reality, it's nothing that you have to look at right at that moment that the sun is hitting your bike. So I don't look at that as a huge minus. Do I think it could be fixed? Sure, but I wouldn't stop me from buying the bike. The things that you need to see, your speed, your tach, your gas, are all in easy-to-read analog gauges. The sound system is disappointing, I think. The speakers are disappointing. The stock speakers are a little bit meek. They're a little flat, a little lifeless. I replaced the front speakers with Polk Audio DB521 speakers. And they do give you better sound. I mean, there's only so much you can do because there really isn't much space in this fairing to work with. So you can't get, you know, huge speakers that are deep with a nice big magnet. But the Polk Audios are better. However, there's always going to be, or there always is, a rattle, or maybe not a rattle, but a resonant frequency vibration that you're going to hear at certain times. So I'm disappointed with that. I've even put rubber washers in between the screws, in between the speakers and the back of the, where it mounts, and I still get vibration. It's reduced, but it's still there. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. There is also a gremlin, some sort of electric or electronic gremlin, that sometimes when you start the bike up, it will not see your iPod, and it can take. It can take 5 or 10 minutes sometimes for it to actually find your iPod. Sometimes you have to go back and forth between the source, and it'll eventually find it. I don't know if that's an Indian thing or an iPod thing, because frankly, iPods are flaky sometimes anyway. But I have a feeling it's more Indian than it is iPod. Other than that, I mean, again, don't let radio quality dissuade you from buying this bike, because it's very acceptable. when you're going down the road at 60 or 70, you're not going to really know if you have, a real high-end audio system or not. It does work for me. I really do enjoy it. So you've got the keyless start, which is fantastic. You've got a key fob that just sits in your pocket. You never have to mess with it, never have to take it out. And it's literally as simple as just putting it in your pocket, getting on the bike. You press the center start button, which I just turned off the bike, but you can press the center start button, hit your fuel cutoff, and then hit the ignition, and the bike starts up. Or you can do it the way I do it. What I do is usually I hit the ignition, then I hit the fuel cutoff, then I hit the ignition again to start it. So that's what I do. And then to turn it off, you can either, I just usually hit the center button and I leave the fuel cutoff on. Other than that, electronically, it's been fine. I really haven't had any issues. It's been a really nice bike in that regard. It's been very reliable, and I've really enjoyed it. Well, guys, that wraps up part 1 of this review. Part 2 is coming up soon. It's going to have all of your questions in it, so I'm looking forward to doing that vlog very soon. Keep the questions coming. They've been fantastic, really deep, good questions I never would have thought of. For right now, sun's going down. It's getting a little bit cooler. I'm going to take my beautiful Chieftain and ride off into the sunset.